Okay. Welcome to the live chat. This is going to be awkward because... No, it isn't. I think I can fix it. There we go. How about that? You gotta have it at a certain orientation, they say. So anyway, yeah, it's the 5th of July, 2024. At least I got that part of it right. So yeah, things happening around the world, here and there and everywhere, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. Mostly, I think it's hype. Now, let me clarify that. I think it's hyped up a little bit much here in the U.S. Our own things that are going on. There's a good percentage of that seems to just be, hype. It's just blown out of proportion, I think. Elsewhere in the world, though, there's a lot of serious stuff going on. I mean, I think of it just in terms of among we humans. Like, what kind of behaviors, what kind of conflicts are going on here? What are we doing? What are we doing to each other? How are we managing our existence? Hey, there's my man, Marsfield Lime. All right, brother. Yeah, got to do some lives, man. I've missed you guys so much. And, I'm not even going to make excuses except to say, shit, glad to hear from you. But, we've got to think about, on a wider scale of what we do to each other and why. Supreme Court ruling on homelessness, Johnson versus Grants Pass. I heard a woman talking about it, and it just made a lot of sense. She said, look, I'm out here. I'm trying to survive. I'm struggling. I've got a tent. I've got a little sleeping bag. I've got my personal possessions here. I put them down somewhere. Maybe my ID, maybe other documents. And, I leave that there and I go looking for work, or I go to get a meal, or I go to do some other thing. And I come back and everything's gone. The police have come and cleaned it out. And it's gone. Now, how does that help me to find a job? How does that help me to get housing? Because now you've deprived me of everything that I own. You've taken me even further down than I was. At least I had a couple of possessions. Now I've got nothing. Yeah. They've done all kinds of things, but, here's the thing. Why not open some lands, some public lands, and, set up spaces on those lands, some decent, nice state or county or federal park land or whatever, a leased piece of land from a private individual or someone of that nature. And just say, hey man, come on out and be part of the community out here. You'd still need obviously you need to have some kind of solution, or at least a better path than just marginalizing people and making their lives harder than they already are. So, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It makes more sense when we all get along as best as we can. As best as we can. The whole thing, in my mind, is the aspect of violence. If you could take violence out of the equation, out of the human equation, if you could say, okay, everything stops short of violence, then things would be a lot easier to work out. But somehow we still have this tendency, this human impulse toward getting our way by means of violence. And it's just not the way that we're going to be able to move this thing we call human civilization forward. I mean, it's a big topic. It's a giant concept, really. But yeah, I mean, who's counting? 8+ billion human beings on the planet, limited resources. Look at all these weather events that are happening now. I mean, the weather events are like bang, bang, bang. The weather events are like the fireworks that I saw last night. Just pop, 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 popping all over the place. What happens if the wind speed picks up to 150, 160, 70 miles an hour? That's not much of a jump from where it is right now in a lot of places. I guess you're going to have to reinforce those giant windmills, the generators, because those things will get blown down, man. But yeah, you can't, I mean, that'll blow down buildings. How do you have high-rise buildings? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and somehow we human beings have to get some kind of control of it, but I doubt it. I doubt we'll be able to. It's really just, not possible, I guess. And that's a little bit disheartening. But what is possible is, I guess, what's in our own realm, our own sphere of thought and feeling and behavior. So we've got our own jurisdictions, and it's a lot of times it's when we go outside of that, start thinking about problems that are outside those lines, those boundaries. It's our main concern really is with what we're able to actually be concerned about, right? And that's or what we're able to control to some degree, which is our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own behaviors. So yeah, within the sphere of our immediate environment, there it is. It's all good though, because if we've got a good perspective, I'm not going to say the right perspective, because whoever does have the right perspective, I wouldn't even know, I don't think anybody would know how to define the right human perspective on being human. I don't know if it's ever been done or even attempted. I don't know how you'd even approach that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about being a decent human being within the scope of your own environment and having some fun in the meantime, not taking things too seriously or, you know, not overly seriously. Because, you just get yourself tensed up and stressed and everything. And if there's nothing we can do about it anyway. But what I've been doing is, a couple of us, we've been putting together a little bit of it's a subsidiary nonprofit. It's called Freedom First USA. And, we have information in these pamphlets about what we call the new American Revolution. This is not something that we're just talking about in theory. This is actually going on right now. We are in we're in the throes of the new American Revolution. And, there's a couple of things that can happen. And again, we got to go outside the boundaries of our own personal interests and get out there into the world of not really politics, because I don't think the formulation of our Constitution involves politics necessarily. I think politics come after the fact. And, I don't like to do politics, on the partisan thing. But, yeah, it's just so many different tribes, it's hard to find one path. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of different paths. There's a lot of different, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. That's an old saying. I didn't make it up. Too many cooks spoil the broth. I mean, there has to be some kind of standard, right? There has to be some kind of agreed to standards for the way human beings treat one another. And that's called human rights or natural rights, or however you want to present it. But I think we all have a basic set of fundamental human rights, or rights as humans. And, those are pretty easy to delineate. And it's already been done to one degree or another. I mean, how hard would it be to come up with, a list that covers all of the essentials? And then you build your system of governance, i.e. your government, around the protection, enforcement, and, if necessary, interpretation of those basic rights. That's what you build the apparatus of governance around, because that's what you most want to protect. Those are your fundamental liberties, your fundamental freedoms are right there, And so it's the Declaration of Independence. Think about it. Set aside all that other nonsense, because we know about all that. But think about these men that were leading the colonists or the colonies. They were the leaders of that day. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Governor Morris, all kinds of others. Alexander Hamilton came into the picture a little bit later. I already said Thomas Jefferson, right? But he wrote most of the Declaration of Independence. And James Madison was certainly in there, in the mix. But this was a very extraordinary document because it said, we the people are rejecting your governance. In other words, this Declaration of Independence just cut off Great Britain, cut off any acknowledgement of its authority to govern any further over the colonies. That's what it boiled down to. And it's a pretty gutsy document because in there it outlines the four most fundamental features of human freedom. And the first one, people don't know this, but the very first one is the right of the people to alter or to abolish their government when that government becomes tyrannical or, becomes I guess tyrannical probably is the best word. I'm trying to think of another word that's equal or better, but I guess tyrannical, because what they thought when they thought of tyrannical, they weren't thinking of Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. They weren't thinking about that. They were thinking about a government that became, that separated from we the people and just took on a life of its own. And not necessarily a person or persons within offices, but that also could be, but rather an institution, something that like AI, I guess. Like we'd be afraid of AI if it just took off on its own, right? But honestly, on that point, I'd rather see an AI president than either one of these guys. I'd rather see an AI president. I'd rather see an AI constitution, really. You put in the parameters of what you want, and it has every resource, every data set available to it. I mean, it's, what is there comparable among individuals, human beings? We can't do that. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with having an AI president. I wouldn't. Because I think an AI courts, there's David Hughes. Hey, Dave. Hi, brother. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having, I'm just saying, Dave, I wouldn't mind having an AI president, really. What do? They're fed information and they make decisions based on that information. What better way than AI? I gotta turn this phone on. But this is the new American Revolution Manifesto for Constitutional Reform. And this is the most famous part of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Now, that's a lot of flowery English verbiage to say simply this: your primary right is the right to create the government you want, the government that most likely is going to secure your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty enlightened. It's pretty, I think it's very forward-looking, of course, because of the first part. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to just start all over again. You have to have a constitutional convention. We, the people, have to create a platform, digital platform, where we can all join in. We can all, sign up, register, have a PIN, whatever we need, get on the platform, and we can create a digital constitutional convention, and where we can actually move forward with a digital government, while this one kind of continues to die. But because that's what it's doing right now. It's broken. I mean, it's worn out. It worked good, worked well for a period of time, but it's certain parts of it are still great. Don't deny that. So you keep what works, you get rid of what doesn't. But yeah, fundamentally, the American people, inhabitants of these United States and their territories, need to get together and agree to disagree. Agree that the majority, a simple majority, vote carries the day. At least for these, at least for issues that are being proposed or brought up by myriads and arrays of different peoples. But everybody should have a voice. Everybody should be able to bring up every issue that affects their life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. Every individual, every inhabitant of these United States should have the equal rights, the equal protection of the law. And I mean, it's right here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Think about this. How could Thomas Jefferson, what would he be thinking? He's sitting at his desk He's got his quill and his paper and his little ink pad, and he's writing the Declaration of Independence. I don't know how many copies they wrote, like 6 or 8 or whatever. I'd have to research it, but they're writing these by hand. And he gets his part. I mean, he's got slaves that are out back of the house. Some of them actually live in the house. So what is he thinking? He's got to be thinking that all human beings are created with the same rights, equally, no matter what your skin color, what your background, your whatever. We all have the same basic worth, the same worth. Nobody has more or less worth as a human being than anyone else. That's where you have to start, right? That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He's also saying, by making this really sharp contrast, by making this statement, he's also saying, but there's a system in place, an institution called slavery, or later called slavery. I don't know what they called it then. Probably the same thing, slavery. But it was an institution that was in existence that he knew they weren't going to be able to get rid of anytime soon. They knew that. This is 1776. This is 1776. Way, way early, man. And, you know, there's only 13 colonies. I don't even know if there was 13 in 1776. I know there was 13 when they had the first Constitutional Convention in 1787. But, yeah, I mean, this is what it's about. It's about recreating, restructuring, reformulating our government. Can it be done? I think so. I think it's straightforward. I think it's fairly easy. I mean, it seems like a real practical approach to me. You know, there's nothing radical about it. It's fundamental and perhaps first right, recognized anywhere in the lists of human rights. Now, here's the thing they said too. This was on the 29th of April, 1778, the Essex result. This was a report that as I understand it, this was a report that some of the delegates, or what would I call them? Agents, maybe not delegates, but agents of the revolution were putting forth in their notes and reports. Quote, "The man who alone undertakes to form a constitution ought to be an unimpassioned being, one of enlightened mind, biased neither by the lust of power, the allurements of pleasure, nor the glitter of wealth, perfectly acquainted with all the alienable and unalienable rights of mankind, possessed of this grand truth that all men are born equally free and that no man ought to surrender any part of his natural rights without receiving the greatest possible equivalent. I mean, they had some pretty high-minded ideals there going on. This was the age of enlightenment, and there was a lot of symbolism. There was a lot of, most certainly, the Masons, the Freemasons, they were, they were all members. They were all members. Anybody who was anybody was a member, and that symbolism is all through. And it was a course, if you will. It was level by level, and they had practices that brought them up, that elevated their human consciousness. These were men who were on the path of enlightenment. They were practicing. I mean, when Big George went out to survey in Virginia and other areas, what we know now as Virginia, when he would go out to survey, and he'd go out there with Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone was a real character. Him and George Washington, he and George Washington were good friends. They were buddies. They both worked as surveyors from time to time. And just amazing stories there about their early days and, their surveying exploits. But I'm out of time, and appreciate you guys making comments and tuning in. I'm hoping that we can do more lives and, start boom, boom, talking about some of this stuff and expanding our own consciousness a little bit, maybe. But appreciate you guys, and hope to see you again soon. I think we will early this next week, maybe Tuesday. Let's try for Tuesday this next week. Anyway, peace. Have a great rest of your 4th of July weekend, and I'll do the same.